Okay. Call the meeting to order at 10 o'clock. In lieu of a prayer, could we have a moment of silence for Dick McGuire? Very critical member of our community that has passed. Thank you. We will be doing a proclamation for Dick. We just, timings is such that we just didn't get it for today. Mr. Wilson.
Price. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. In the event there is an emergency and we need to evacuate the building, please go to the nearest exit the building, move a safe distance away, and make sure, just please follow all directions from first responders. In the event you need assistance getting out of the building, please ask. Additionally, I'd ask that you either turn off or silence all cell phones. Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Hanky.
Here.
Mrs. Fedler. Here. Mr. Tall. Mr. Shaw.
Here.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
Mr. Fisher.
Here.
Mr. Baker.
Here.
Mr. Nolan.
Here.
Mr. O'Brien.
Here.
Mr. Hahn.
Here.
Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Mr. Skelly.
Here.
Mr. Hogan. Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Mrs. Clary. Here. Mr. Wang.
Here.
Mr. Rozell.
Here. Thank you. Because of some of the logistics here today, I'm going to deviate wildly from the schedule in front of you. I'll consider the condensed minutes of December 20th and January 2nd to be accepted as mailed unless there's any additions or corrections. Are there any additions or corrections? Okay, seeing none, they are accepted as mailed. Communications?
For communications, Senator Steck acknowledged receipt of our resolution number 340 to urge the governor and the state legislature to consider the impacts to electrify highway department vehicles by adoption of the advanced clean truck rule, and provided a copy of New York State Senate Bill 9894 that he introduced on August 23rd, 2024. Warren County and received their resolution 533 authorizing payments to SUNY Adirondack. And we received a letter from a Salem resident regarding how her property will be adversely affected by the proposed flood hazard determinations. That's all I have for communications.
Thank you. Any other communications? Seeing none, can I have the audit committee report? Well, but Mr. Rozell, there's a second. Fedler, Hall, Fisher, Baker, O'Brien, Hahn, Clary, Wang, and Nolan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Now I'm going to jump to some retirement recognition thing to see we've got a number of employees here and we'll get them back to work. Okay, and if the person is here, come forward with your department head at least. Dale Goodsell, is Dale here? I guess I couldn't have missed the hat. Dale worked 20 years and 1 month for buildings and grounds. You want to make a speech?
Dale's been here, what did you say, 20 years? What? 1 month, way longer than me. He's one of the originals that passes it on to all the young guys, so you wouldn't want to hear my speech. Yeah.
Well, maybe we would. Congratulations. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, right. Okay, got a couple from DPW. First one's Tom Roberts. Well, Tom doesn't quite make what Dale did. He's got 20 years and 3 weeks. You gonna make a speech? Okay. If you want to talk on that.
Am I loud enough? So,
We have to talk into that so we can.
hi, I don't know. All right, so Tommy was on our bridge crew. He's worked here for over 20 years, and this is his Fort Edward Barn Fan Club. And we're gonna, most everybody who drives in the county drives over a bridge that Tommy worked on. And we're gonna miss his meticulousness for sure. So thank you, Tommy.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.
Why don't you just all hitch over this way a little bit and we'll maybe spread the barn on both sides and then you'll have a.
Wide lens.
Gonna have to stand. Perfect.
Here's Mike Wilbur here.
Thank you guys for coming. Not only does Mike not have fan club, but Mike didn't even make it.
Okay. Well, that's what we gotta do.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
Well, Mike Wilbur without a fan club has worked 30 years and 8 months. So that's pretty impressive, in DPW and solid waste, which is fitting. Okay, there you are. Okay. Now we'll do the fun stuff. We have a public hearing on the Washington County Local Solid Waste Management Plan for 2020 through 2029. I'll have the clerk read the notice, please.
Public hearing concerning Washington County's local solid waste management plan. The Washington County Board of Supervisors will hold a public hearing on January 17th, 2025 at 10 a.m. in the Board of Supervisors Chambers, Washington County Municipal Center, Building B, 383 Broadway, Washington County, Fort Edward, New York, for the purpose of hearing public comments on Washington County's local solid waste management plan.
I will declare the public meeting open at 10:09. Now, if you wish to speak, come to this mic, speak into the mic because we have to do a transcript, all these meetings. First one I got is Roy Atkinson. And I'm not going to hook you off after 3 minutes in a public hearing. However, if what you've got is a long, any of you have got a long written statement, we can make copies and spread it out to people and they can read it. So we want to hear what you got to say.
I knew I shouldn't have signed that paper first. Well, my reason for being here is that certainly I am supporting a waste or solid waste management plan, and it's certainly improved upon. What I'm going to talk about is, as a resident here of Hudson Falls, I live on Burgoyne Ave. I was a faithful follower of the transfer stations that we had here. And since that, I guess they've all been prioritized throughout the county. There's been major reductions in the availability of that to the public. the one here that I go to, is half a day on Saturdays and a full day on Thursdays. Not overly convenient to the public. Uh, the waste that you bring down there is certainly, it's fairly expensive as for the solid waste you put in. But the recyclables are what bothers me with what you bring there. Everything is put into one of two containers. You've got the solid waste and you got the recyclables. There's limited options, of course, the basics, cardboard and stuff like that, plastics. But when it comes to electronics, there's little or no option. There is no option there. To my knowledge, no formal place that's supervised, if you will, by the county is available in the form that we can use it there, and it's monitored. So it's difficult to get rid of TV sets or computers. I know there's a law in place that requires that manufacturers, stores will take recyclable electronics and whatnot, but it's difficult. I looked through, DC has a recyclable map for equipment. And in that, it cites numerous places throughout the state. And the only one I could find in that, there's a lot of little points you touch that brings up the location of the recyclable center. There's one here in Hudson Falls on La Crosse Street. And that's the only one that I found locally here. There may be a couple other ones throughout. I know Staples and Best Buy does things. That's in Saratoga County and Warren County. So we're very limited here in Washington County as to what we can recycle. See, I don't want to get too deep. I did find very curious that a lot of things that are promoted by DEC, which I didn't think was initially, but after doing some looks at it, there are some things that when you develop this plan, certainly whether it's, you can, the recyclables of any sort, the baling, the involvement, when I used to go down and talk with the county employees that worked at the transfer station, they were telling me at that point, recyclables, their market for resale wasn't that great. Since that time, with China getting out of the recycle business, the market has improved. The United States has improved upon how they recycle stuff. So the markets, the price has gone up on what's available. In what one of the speakers here today will probably describe to you how well these prices have gone up, which is to our benefit. And I think it certainly is encouraging for us to, here in this county, to improve upon what we're doing. And I think that plan needs to develop some of that. And now I've noticed DC is offering monies for food disposal. There's a lot of different areas in which we could take a good hard look at and improve upon what we're doing. And I'm not going to go into any major detail because I don't want to lose my time. But there is one thing, as you know, Washington County is a rural county for sure. But one of the things that I found very interesting, I brought it up to with the organization here in the Fort Stops PFAS, is I was reading an outdoor article, the New York Outdoor News. And in that article, it brought up concerns that have been raised in Maine regarding a do not eat ban on deer and turkeys. And the reason they banned it is PFAS is, I want to say it's in probably about 8 counties that you can't supposedly are banned from eating the meats. The reason? The farmland that is in those areas, the deer and turkey and probably other animals, I'm sure, are eating whatever's there, and this PFAS gets in their muscle tissue. at very high levels within them. So their DEC there is discouraging any eating of those things. I guess the concern I want to make with that is that we're very dependent on deer and turkeys and the livestock that lives on those farms. So I think that we need to be very careful on what we are putting into the soil, whether it be air, water, whatever. So this plan, as far as I'm concerned, and many others that I know, are crucial to not only us as humans, but the wildlife in this county. And I do not think, and I'll certainly say it, I just don't think there's been enough effort on the county's part to make sure that I think, safe to say, most of us can agree upon the fact we've went through a lot of tough times with PCBs and all the other environmental concerns with the trash plant, being a high polluter, many things that are going on here. And I think it's our responsibility as the public and as administrators here to make sure that we're being safe with that. What's involved is a disadvantaged community, well recognized. So I ask that that consideration be given, that we support making our citizens, the wildlife, and everybody within this county safe from all these pollutants. So that plan, I think, is going to take a step in the right direction. I thank you.
Next speaker, I'm sure will be incredibly brief. Tracy?
Good morning. My name is Tracy Frisch. I'm a proud resident of Argyle for more than 20 years. And I am pleased that we have an opportunity to comment on the local solid waste management plan draft, which I believe could be greatly improved. And I think whether or not the plan itself is greatly improved, I think there's a lot of opportunity for the county and municipalities to start solving the solid waste plant problems in this county. And there's community interest. I can assure you there is community interest. After the transfer stations were sold, first they were leased to Earth, Metal and Waste, I think they were called. That company was called, and all the different categories remained for several years. And then, and they remained for the duration of that company's ownership or lease and ownership of the facilities. And people can, but then they instituted a fee, which was the same equivalent to garbage. So people had no financial motivation to recycle. And if we don't want to have landfills and trash incinerators everywhere, we need to divert our usable waste, especially, food waste and recyclables, and we need to, and reusable items, like this sweater, which a friend gave me recently. So, there's many, many things that go into the garbage that are perfectly usable. And there's a robust system of reuse and goes far beyond thrift shops in this country that's growing, and especially the younger people are really interested in buying lightly used clothes and furniture and stuff like that. So there's many areas that we can improve. I want to just briefly say, I'm sorry to remind you, but the county has made several major mistakes in the past. So I'm just going to go over them very quickly and urge you to go beyond that and stop making these big mistakes. First, the incinerator, which has created kind of hell on earth for the people who live near it in Hudson Falls. As well, I'm involved in helping to start a group there. I'm the founder or co-founder of Clean Air Action Network of Glens Falls. And one of our latest initiatives is helping the people who have been complaining to us about malfunctions at a 33-year-old trash plant that they've lived with for the duration, malfunctions of black smoke, white smoke, and loud noises, unpredictable and not being dealt with adequately by either the facility or the DEC. People are not getting good answers about what's being done to prevent these malfunctions in the future. And not only did the Warren and Washington County Boards of Supervisors back in the late 1980s go forward on this in collaboration with the 2 County Industrial Development Agency, but they also sued the citizens that objected. Over about 400 citizens, residents of the 2 counties were sued, putting a real, intimidating them, and ultimately the one citizens group sued back, countersued, and they won court, legal fees and stuff. But it still was a really sad episode in the history of these 2 counties. The incinerator needs to be closed. It's way past its life expectancy and doesn't work well anymore, if it ever worked well. And it's not a solution because A, it pollutes the air, and the incinerator ash is a third of the weight of the garbage that goes in, and it's far more toxic, and it has to be disposed of at a landfill. So it's not an alternative to a landfill. Number 2, not maintaining the transfer stations, which were well loved and well used by the people of the county. And people had learned how to sort their recyclables, and they did that, weekly, and, it was an effective way of managing recyclables. Yes, the market tanked, but the market is well up right now. And I'm going to give you some prices. As of May 2024, the market price for baled recyclable commodities, corrugated cardboard, $124 a ton. PET plastic, $320 a ton. HDPE plastic, $480 a ton. And aluminum cans, $1,450 a ton. Washington County is leaving that money on the table. It's giving that money to Waste Connections, the 4th or 5th largest integrated waste services corporation in the country, which now owns the transfer stations. So not only selling the transfer stations, but not putting safeguards in place before they were sold. So those safeguards requiring that whoever owns the transfer stations continues to have source separated recyclables so that people are not mixing them, and I'll tell you why in a moment, and also requiring that the collection of recyclables be free to the residents. And the reason for for separating these materials is it costs about $150 to send it to a sorting facility, a materials recovery facility. That makes recyclables twice as costly to manage as garbage. That is not, if you want to move in a certain direction, you don't put a financial disincentive on it. So that's a huge financial disincentive. And let me see if there was anything else I wanted to say about that. The Washington County, like all counties in New York, was required to pass a source separation law. We have a source separation law of 1992. The county has not enforced it. In fact, reading the plan, it said in several places, several waste haulers provide a receptacle for recyclables. Under the county law, every waste hauler that collects garbage needs to provide a receptacle for recyclables. One of the things that angered me the most about the plan is there were all these unjustifiable assertions because Washington County no longer owns the transfer stations and is not involved in solid waste, it cannot enforce the law? Gee, that's really interesting news to me. It seems like it's most important to enforce the law when the county is not providing those services. We know that in many cases, in the past at least, recyclables were taken to the trash incinerator. That happened with the village of, or I believe it's the town of Fort Edward, and they made an agreement with DEC to put one dumpster for recyclables near the town hall. For how many people? I don't know how many people in the town, but we're talking at least 5,000 that are not in the village, I'm guessing. So that's not an adequate solution, and there are communities in this country and abroad that collect, and the Village of Greenwich used to do this, that collect source-separated recyclables. You have one container for paper, you have another, or, it might be a bag, paper, plastic, cardboard, et cetera. And those recyclables are recycled. But public confidence in recycling collected in a mixed system has gone through the floor. And you wonder why. I mean, if it's going to cost the company twice as much, they have no motivation to really recycle, really take it towards the recycling, so that it will be recycled. And those prices I gave you are for clean recyclables, not for recyclables mixed with garbage. So I just want to give you a little, and one more mistake was repealing the hauler licensing law, hauler licensing and data reporting law. Warren County now has such a regulation, they didn't have to pass a law to put that in place. And they have a fee for the license, which pays for much of a staff employee's pay compensation. And I don't know if there was ever an employee in Washington County that took that data that was coming in and input it into a computer. So there's a database and can track things. And that's an easy way to carry out enforcement, because if they have the data that was reported, they could ask for a weight slip or an invoice from the company and say, oh, show us where you're taking to recycle to a sorting facility for recyclables. If they don't show you, then you can give them a warning and then say, you need to do this. So anyway, but I saw no evidence that data was aggregated, and maybe I missed it. I didn't read the local solid waste plan over and over. Not really fun to keep, to scrutinize it to that level, but I didn't see any evidence of that, and I would like an answer. So I want to mention my work, and I see someone else from our group who's also a Washington County resident. 5 years ago, in September or October of 2019, we started a zero waste Warren County. It was going to be both counties, but there were only 3 or 4 people that were participating from Washington County, and all the energy was in Warren County. So gradually it became Warren County. And I just want to tell you about the reception of our group at the Board of Supervisors, especially the Public Works Committee, which we have the most contact with, and also about what has been achieved. And I say this because I'd love to see some of the same achievements happening in Washington County. And I think it's well possible. And there are profitable things that the county can do, and there's state and federal grants. And the state grants, there's opportunities every year. And I challenge the Board of Supervisors to think about doing these things. There are plenty of concerned residents of the county who would love to do research and partner with you and help get things going in their towns. Okay, so our group, Zero Waste Warren County, has an excellent working relationship with the Public Works Committee of the Warren County Board of Supervisors. When one of our representatives or a group of us go to those meetings, we are welcomed. We are greeted and, our friends from from Zero Waste Warren County are here. Would you like to go up to the podium and address the group? They had a very weak solid waste management plan, business as usual. We analyzed it and commented extensively and publicly in 2020. They approved the plan with a few corrections, but the Public Works Superintendent assured us that they would be willing to go beyond the plan, and he has been true to his word. They have gone well beyond the plan, and I will just outline two things. Three things. So they recently, there's a spinoff group from Zero Waste Warren County that's been advocating for composting. And Warren County did a grant with matching state funds that was funded to do an organics management plan. And so there was plenty of public input. There was a public advisory committee that some of us participated in. And that plan laid out a path to get to compost food waste. Next, the county applied for a grant this past summer, and it was funded. It's almost $100,000. The county had agreed to match it as was required, and the county is in the grant was a 500 they proposed a 500 household pilot project, and they have a site for a food waste composting facility on county-owned land in Queensbury. And they expect to have the first module of the aerated static pile food waste composting facility installed and ready to go by late spring or summer. They also applied there's a second application, but it's a much better one. There's a new solid waste and recycling and solid waste compliance coordinator who's an experienced, he was previously the sustainability coordinator at SUNY Adirondack. He's an experienced individual. He actually was in our zero waste group at the beginning, but couldn't continue because of his job commitments. And so they applied for $1.4 million, a non-matching grant to the EPA, and expect to hear soon. And this is to construct and equip a central recycling facility, not a sorting facility, but to take the recyclables that are sorted into many categories at the 12 town transfer stations, bale them and aggregate them into 20-ton loads that could be picked up by a tractor trailer upon the sale of the recyclables. These market prices are real, and the company that we have brought in, and they did a presentation, and we can bring that same company, it's called Replenish, in to do a presentation to the Public Works Committee or any other body here. They calculated that Warren County was leaving $560,000 on the table every year, plus they were paying out more than that to get rid of the recyclables. Warren County has now taken over trucking. They have, from the transfer stations, they have 3 trucks. I think they had one, they acquired 2 more. I don't know if they had grants, I believe so. And they have hired 3 drivers. The towns will be paying the cost of the transportation, but it will be probably a third of the cost of hiring waste management to truck the materials. So these are things that, by exiting from the solid waste sector, you have put enormous costs on residents. You've reduced the services available to us, and you've reduced the recycling rate, and have impacted the environment in a negative way. And you can change that. It's not going to happen all at once. As I said, we've been at it for 5 years as a zero waste group. We've developed respectful relationships. We've proven that we have expertise, that we can bring in experts, and also look into, find models for whatever we're suggesting, and things can come through. So we would like to see those kinds of things happen in Washington County, and we believe it is possible and that you would have enormous community support. Thank you.
Dan Otby? Don? There he is.
Hello, my name is Don Odie. I'm a resident of the town of Jackson. Um, First of all, I must admit, when I signed up there, I thought I was just registering attendance. I didn't know I was going to be asked to speak. But I will say a few words. I don't have any silver bullet for all of this. All I will say is things need to be done, and this is a time that we can't afford. There's a cost to everything, but there's a bigger cost to doing nothing than there is to going forward with some of these plans. We need to be proactive. We need to take a leadership position and not just let it be rolled over us, whatever happens. So I will just encourage the supervisors not just to look at, the small picture, look at the big picture. This is not going away. We have kids, grandchildren, so on, friends, neighbors. It's going to be with us. We've got to deal with it. So please look at the big picture, and I will reiterate, not specifically, but the people who came before have done a lot of research. They're doing a great job, and we got to listen and go forward. Thank you.
Mel Healy?
My name is ML Healy. I live in the town of Easton, and I live in the village of Greenwich. I just have three things that I'd like to bring to the attention of the supervisors. One of them is I sense that there's quite a potential for education about recycling. As Tracy had mentioned, there was a dip in the financial benefits of recycling back around 2017. That's really changed dramatically. And a lot of people aren't aware of that. They just figure, well, especially with the young people, it's all thrown away. And there's great pushback to anyone who suggests otherwise. They've made up their minds, this is the way it's going to be, this is the way the world has turned, and don't bother me with this. So I think this is really a great opportunity for the town supervisors to consider maybe some kind of projects with their libraries. If the town libraries wanted to take on ways to investigate recycling, teach people about recycling, maybe come up with some projects that young people could do, that adults could do, some kinds of presentations, that would be the groundswell for this. That would be the community re-engaging and saying, yeah, this really is something that we want to look into, especially if the information is going to start to be brought forth about how toxic a lot of the chemicals are now in these plastics. They are not the plastics of when we were kids. They're completely different. And the federal government has not had an opportunity to even assess the harms or the benefits of these chemicals. So a lot of them are completely uncategorized, if you will. So the second thing that I want to say, which really kind of leads into this, is that ultimately we end up paying for any of this oversight in health issues that come up probably months, years later, look at the whole situation with the PCBs and now with the forever chemicals. So we're kind of kicking the can down the road that this probably is going to cost quite a bit more in time to come if we don't really get a handle on it now and just implement some simple solutions that can start to roll the ball down and gather momentum. And it will be a situation that over a number of years will start to take care of itself. And the third thing I'd like to say is I really urge the supervisors to investigate this company that Tracy had talked about, Replenish, REPLENYSH. It looks like they were really key actors in the success of what's been happening in Warren County. And I think that they've been a big asset to the financial parts of this whole project. Thank you.
Probably should have, when it started, had Laura come up and summarize a little bit as to what we were doing on the plan, just because we're gonna take this information and go back into, our committee and talk about it. But if, maybe Laura would like to come up and tell us just where we are at with this plan right now and what happens next.
So, I mean, firstly, we want to thank you very much for the comments that everybody has made. As you may be aware, I think it was outlined in the initial portions of the plan. New York DEC requires every county to adopt a solid waste management plan. As Tracy has discussed, because solid waste is privatized in the county, what we can legally do and enforce is somewhat limited by that. So the plan as it is presented contains a matrix at the back of the plan that has got a number of ideas related to education, related to how we can help work with the public to encourage more recycling. Because the general idea, what DEC wants to see, and I think what we all want to see, is an overall reduction of the waste stream. So, that begs the question of how do we accomplish that? So again, the plan as written is identifying things that can be done based on the state of the complex movement of the collection of waste across the county today. It also contains an inventory of sort of who's been out there, data that was collected by Washington County when the county still owned responsibility for the transfer stations, compiled with some information that we were able to collect from DEC. And it essentially presents a moment in time. This is the data that we have right now. And the intention is to do what we can, which is identified within that matrix. And then in a 2-year time frame, we will recollect and reanalyze data to try and determine like what differences, what has happened. So with regards to what happens next, we are listening. We have heard you. We are going to draft a summary table of the comments that we receive. We've actually had the plan out there and available for public comment since early November. These are the first comments that we have heard. We will summarize them, and then the comments and ideas will be presented at a county committee meeting, likely either the Ag Planning or the Highway Committee meeting, to discuss which of these ideas that we should be investigating further. Do we want to change the draft plan? How do we want to proceed? And then once those decisions are made, we go forward with a plan and adopt it. But again, the intention is still, no matter what we decide on as our achievable activities, and so some of the things that were mentioned earlier, like information at libraries, those are in fact noted in the plan as one thing that we potentially can do. And the overall idea is to find ways that are within our control to mitigate what is becoming a worldwide problem, which is just too much trash, and how do we handle it? So Again, you will be hearing back from us. Anybody who's here today or who wants later can certainly receive a summary of the notes that we've taken today, as well as we will accept comments on the plan, either online or you can connect directly with the county planning office. And we will then incorporate all of those comments. We'll collect them till January 24th. And then once that summary is done, we will certainly hold another public meeting, which will be done through committee to discuss what's summarized. So that's the process. That's where we go from here.
Excuse me, someone came in a little late and
I got it.
Hello, my name is Nancy Alec Crosby. I live in Fort Miller, the town of Greenwich, and I'm thankful to our elected officials for offering us this opportunity to share our responses to the draft solid waste management plan. I feel that it is, in my opinion, that the data assessment information that is contained in the solid waste management plan as it's presented are scarce, and that the aspirations are too low. We can do better. The word privatization is often used as a barrier. I can't believe I'm old enough to remember this, but in the 1980s, a group of us in Greenwich, formed Sort Trash and Recycle Together. We were educating the public on recycling. We would collect all our recyclables, which at that time the town and county were not doing, and we would drive them ourselves down to the MRF, the Material Recycling Center in Albany. Fast forward to a time when our transfer stations were very successful, well-run. I forget his name, who used to be at Greenwich. If you had wet newspaper, take it away. We're not taking wet newspaper here. We want top dollar. I remember when white paper gathered $100 a ton, and we were making money on that. Then fast forward, of course, China soared, the cost of recyclables plummeted. Our trash that was being sent to China and other places was in such poor condition. We should be ashamed that they would not take it any longer. So markets plummeted. Where to from there? We have our draft solid waste management plan. And there are a couple of key things that I think we could improve on, and I'd like to share my opinion, and hopefully, never mind that it's privatized, never mind. We must make changes in spite of that. The key items, one is we need to shut down the aging and poorly monitored Hudson Falls trash incinerator. Boom, it's beyond its days. Two, we need to develop a plan to reduce the amount of food scraps going into the waste stream. I've read that a full 30%, maybe more, of our waste stream is food scraps. They're heavy, they're wet. If you take them to the wheelabrator, they don't burn well. We can turn them into a better product, and I don't mean biosolids. And third, reinstate our waste hauler licensing and data reporting law from 2009. It was a requirement at that time that all haulers had to follow the New York State source separation law of 1992. We need good, clear data on the quantity of our trash and recyclables that are being collected by the haulers and where they're being delivered to. Without a baseline, there's no way to pat ourselves on the back when we improve. There's no way to assess whether we are reducing our waste stream over time. A licensing law would allow our county to collect data from each hauler and how much and where it's being delivered to. And this would include municipal solid waste, garbage, recyclables, construction debris. And I really turn to you, my elected officials, to put in writing in the draft solid waste management plan our specific goals, not generalities, as a community to reduce our waste and provide oversight by implementing the law of 1992, which requires source separation. and requires, and require the haulers to assess their quantities and destination of trash and recyclables. Oh, I'm a retired teacher, and many years ago, we did a fun activity in Schuylerville with the fourth grade classes, which I called the Biggest Losers. And we started on Monday of Earth Week Monday, and we measured each of the 5 fourth grade classes how much waste they had at the end of the lunch period. Tuesday, we measured, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then we compared how much waste there was on Monday to how much there was on Friday. And the class that reduced the most, the Biggest Loser, won a prize. We could only do it because of Monday, the day we assessed our initial waste. By Friday, we had more data. The kids learned a lot. And the biggest reason that our class won, Dave Meehan's class, bless his soul, because we started composting. We pulled out our food scraps, and that was the heaviest part of the waste stream. He got one of those rotary composters, put it out in the area out in between, in the middle of the courtyard, and lo and behold, we won, and we were the biggest losers. So let's see if we can't become bigger losers in Washington County. Thank you for your time.
Okay, is anybody else that wishes to be heard in this public hearing? Okay, yeah, we don't need to read it in, we can just put it in. Yeah. I mean, whatever you want, Jay, if you want to read it, you can, but we can. All right.
The resident's name is Bonnie Hoig. She owns the Diana, let me say it right, Diana Sanctuary in Jackson. She also was a member of START, as the former speaker was. And her only statement is, as we look at the plan, is where's our trash coming from? Where's it going? That's her statement.
I know, I had one sentence.
All right, one sentence. We gird our loins for the longest sentence in the Western.
I will really be quick. Ron mentioned wildlife that is where there's a ban on consumption, hunted wildlife because of PFAS forever chemicals. And I just want to explain the source because this pertains to our solid waste management plan. Washington County composts sewage sludge from the Hudson Falls, Fort Edward wastewater treatment plant. I know from someone who tested it, but has not publicly released the results, that it is extremely high in PFAS. I will probably be taking a test of that sewage sludge myself, or sewage sludge compost, through the Sierra Club to get it tested. Sewage sludge around the country, there's been New York Times articles galore. There was even a one recently that said 3M admitted to EPA decades ago, or warned EPA that sewage sludge was highly contaminated with PFAS. PFAS, as you may know, is carcinogen. It's highly persistent in the environment and in human bodies. It bioaccumulates up the food chain. We do not want to be, it gets in our water. EPA set high standard, or set low thresholds for our water. New York State has a standard of 3 parts per trillion. It's extremely toxic, and we should not be we should not be giving or selling this sewage sludge compost to farmers, gardeners, and landscapers. It is a bad thing for our environment and for our health. That's all I wanted to say.
Reiterate, that was a pretty long sentence. Okay. Anyone else that wishes to be heard in this public hearing? Is there any more public comment in this public hearing? Is there anyone who wishes to be heard in this public hearing? Having called for public comment 3 times and heard none, I will declare it public hearing closed at 10:56. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Good to hear. Okay, we'll move on to the introduction of resolutions. We have no need to set anything aside or change the rules this time.
Resolution number 8 by Supervisor Hanky, title Supervisors appointed to the Soil and Water Conservation District Board.
I'll move 8. Is there a second? Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Campbell, Clary, Roselle, and Nolan. Their discussion on this. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 9 by Supervisor Hanky, title Appoint Members of the Intercounty Legislative Committee of the Adirondacks.
I move 9. Is there a second? Fedler, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Hahn, Campbell, Skelly, Clary, Roselle, and Noland. Okay, before we go on, we'll make a motion to amend, and before I do that, I'll say that any number of people can be on this committee and anyone can go. I would make a motion to amend it to add Supervisor O'Brien's name to it. Is there any other supervisor before I make the amendment that would like to have their name added to it? Mr. Hahn. So I would amend it to include Mr. O'Brien and Mr. Hahn. Is there a second for that? Fedler, Hall, Shaw, Hall, Fisher, Baker, Campbell, Skelly, Clary, Roselle, and Noland. Any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Returning to the motion as amended. Any further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 10 by Supervisor Shaw, title Establish Lead Agency for Seeker Review and set time and place for a public hearing on Washington County Consolidated Agricultural District Number 1.
Mr. Chairman, moving resolution number 10.
Moved by Supervisor Shaw. Is there a second? Fedler, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Hahn, Campbell, Skelly, Clary, and Noland. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 11 by Supervisor Shaw, title Establish Lead Agency for Seeker Review and set time and place for a public hearing on Washington County Consolidated Agricultural District Number 2.
Chairman, moving resolution 11.
Moved by Supervisor Shaw, second. Fedler, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Hahn, Campbell, Skelly, Clary, and Noland. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 12 by Supervisors Campbell, Roselle, O'Brien, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Hall, Wilson, Nolan, title to write off taxes and cancel interest and penalties, Town of White Creek.
Moving number 12.
Moved by Supervisors Campbell, second. Fedler, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Clary, Wang, and Noland. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 13 by Supervisors Campbell, Roselle, O'Brien, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Hall, Wilson, Nolan, title amend 2025 County Road Fund budget for special road painting.
Moving resolution 13.
Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Hall, Fisher, Hahn, Clary, and Noland. Discussion. The road painting looks really nice. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 14 by Supervisors Campbell, Roselle, O'Brien, Shaw, Skelly, Hogan, Clary, Hall, Wilson, Nolan, title to amend Department of Social Services for fiscal year 2024 shortfalls.
Moving resolution number 14.
Moved by Supervisor Campbell, second. Fedler, Hall, Fisher, O'Brien, Clary, and Nolan. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. That concludes the resolutions. We'll move on to supervisors' comments, and this time we're going to entirely break the tradition. I am going to go first. Yeah. You could hook me after 3 minutes. In terms of the solid waste plan, I'm glad we got plenty of public comment today. However, I'm always baffled by the fact that there's actually food waste. Don't people own dogs and chickens, for crepe's sakes? I've never had any food waste in my entire life. Nothing goes out that way. Second, we have a young lady sitting here who's remarkably different today than she was a couple of days ago, the last time I saw her. Hannah Pettis, who is in our council's office, is now Hannah Pettis Esquire. She was sworn in as a attorney yesterday down at the Egg, and congratulations, Hannah. So now when we curse out attorneys, we can curse Hannah out also. While we're on that, from the Argyle perspective, also down at the Egg yesterday was a young lady named Cheyenne Lufkin from the town of Argyle being sworn in as a newly minted attorney. That is Lester Lufkin, who was her great-grandfather, who was a town supervisor in Argyle, and Carl Lufkin, who was a supervisor and I believe chairman of the board up here, would be her grandfather. Sandy Lufkin, who was on our board of elections for years, is her grandmother, and Scott Lufkin, who's on my town board, is her father. So congratulations to Cheyenne. And congratulations to Argyle for having cold weather, because our town skating rink has been incredibly successful. Okay, Mr. Noland.
The town and village of Greenwich had a week-long event that just ended. And the event was the presence in the bat and kill along the village line of a Eurasian goose that has never been seen in New York State, and some say has never been seen in the northeastern United States. It drew people from many surrounding states. We actually had a traffic jam on Main Street in the village of Greenwich, not seen since the end of the last tractor parade. This goose was of such interest to birders that they caused the traffic jam, but someone, probably a statistician, went down and counted the number of cars parked there and the number of people with cameras. And they said they counted cars with license plates from 8 different states. There were, along the bat and kill, 12 people with cameras and tripods and so on at the time they were there. So it was a big event for Greenwich. And many of those people who came, by the way, did frequent the businesses, so business owners say. Unfortunately, the goose has flown the coop, but hopefully the goose will fly to one of our other towns in Washington County, and you too can have a great event for a week or so. Thank you.
There was controversy on that because back in this is called a taiga bean goose. Bean as in they land in bean fields and eat beans. That's why they call them that. There was a tundra bean goose in 2021 that landed down on Saratoga Lake that I happened to see and write about, and we got the same sort of thing. I don't know how these birders, how their information flow works, but it's within minutes, there's thousands of them there. This one I was claiming was a tundra bean goose, and it's just they were calling it a taiga bean goose because they all wanted something else in their life list. But after they got some decent pictures, I have to admit I was wrong. It's got an orange beak. It's a taiga bean goose. So, Mr. Wang. Very good. That's great news. Anybody else? Mr. Campbell.
Glad I got to go last today.
Don't assume that. Somebody will pop in.
Yeah, especially after they listen to me for a couple minutes. I found the public hearing very interesting today. There's a lot of things that we look at here, and it happens to be on the day when we had a moment of silence for Dick McGuire.
And if you think back of Dick's museum and all the things he collected and how things were done, everything was recycled. Nothing went to waste. That's the way our society was. It was a time of glass jars for canning. Canning wasn't actually done in cans. It was glass jars. I think we all had grandparents that had root cellars, and there was always cans, there was potatoes, there was everything. A whole different way of how we do things today. Cloth diapers. We probably all wore cloth diapers when we were born. It was before Huggies and all those things that you have today. And we all ate from the 5 food groups. Now everything is processed. The PFOAs are a perfect example. Everything is processed, and it's all made for convenience. And it's basically been the same generation that's here that's speaking today that actually took us in that direction. So it's just something that blows my mind as to where we've come from and where we've went. But how many centurions have we talked about here in the last few years? And they all recycled. They all ate organic because that's what everybody's diet was. So we're trying to revert to the past when basically we're the same group that evolved to where we are today. So I don't know how you reverse that, undo that, because everybody wants everything instant. So it's just a very interesting perspective when you hear it and look at the big picture, as they say. When we talk about grants and all this funding, we're the highest tax state in the nation because of all of those grants and funding. Don't think anything that we get here is free. We pay for it all, one way or another, no matter how you look at it. And the private sector, as much as we would like to beat on them, the private sector does a better job than government has for a long time. And they actually provide jobs that don't, suck the life out of our taxpayers. So it's just an interesting concept to take it in its entirety. And we just need to look at it with a lot of wisdom as to where we want to go moving forward. There was nothing they said that was wrong. In fact, the one I thought that stuck out was they told us all the things that, the people that preceded us or whatever did wrong and made mistakes, and I assume we will too. So I think they got that correct. I think government doesn't always get it right. So just thoughts from what I heard today. I'll remind you later.
Yeah. This is Clary.
I just have to do this because I don't want Brian to be last.
Thank
You're welcome. Thinking about it, I really appreciated everybody coming and speaking. I think that sometimes we don't give our communities enough credit for what they do. I look at Salem, and we in our household do all of our cans and put them in the Boy Scout bin. And the amount of money that they make and how much sorting they do and how much effort they have to put into it. Every year they've taken a trip to either the Southwest or the Northwest. They go for 10 days. It's all paid for due to collecting aluminum cans, and that's quite an accomplishment for those Boy Scouts. I'm impressed with them. The other thing is that our library just put in an ugliest sin, bright green book bin that actually recovers books and puts it back into circulation for recyclables. That darn book bin has only been there 30 days and it's been filled up 4 times already. And what is shocking to me, that it's actually going back into the system and recyclable. But when you saw it there, the complaints I'm getting, did anybody see that big ugly box in front of the library? Well, it's serving a purpose. It's working out very well. The other thing is the Shop Off Broadway, which we have, which does recycling clothes and household items. It's only open 3 days a week. The place is always packed. And the amount of stuff that goes in and out of that place is shocking. They have, by selling dollar items of recyclables, they've put back into the community about $400,000 in the last 10 years. And in the meantime, the people that volunteer there, they get to have coffee together, they chat and they laugh. And, there's some things, simple things that can happen.
that we're all doing, and that needs to be continued. It's a wonderful effort. So that being said, that's it. Thank you.
Come last after everybody else now.
Really want to be last, don't you? I just want to thank the board for taking a moment to acknowledge Dick McGuire. At 102 years old, and his mind sharp right to the end. It's a loss to the ag industry and the community. You can only sit back and imagine he lived through probably the greatest change civilization will ever see, from no electricity and running water and milking cows by hand to now we have 3,000 cow farms in this county that robots milk, and all the automated equipment there is. As Brian was saying, history and looking back at recycling, when we have people that are this old and this sharp, we don't pay enough attention to them because they can tell us things that have happened in the past so that maybe we don't repeat the same mistakes over again. And we tend to do that through history, and they could give us a little heads up. The funeral is tomorrow in West Hebron. I anticipate it will be packed. Generally, when somebody's that old, they've lost all their friends and there's just some family members. But Dick was the kind of person that he lost most of his friends, but he bonded with the next generation and mentored the next generation. So it will be full.
So I was able to take a tour with Sue and Matt Jones at Hudson Headwaters, and it's going to be an impressive add to the community. And I thank you for putting the tour together, and I'm hoping we can do something with Intercounty, maybe before it opens too, if we have a chance, because it's a big situation throughout the whole region for rural healthcare, and there's no question Hudson Headwaters wants to do it right. So that was very good interest. The other thing was, I left out of the last part, was when we talk about the regulations and DEC and all those things, there's kind of a procedure here you go through, just like with the PCBs. GE paid to put all that into the system. Then they were told it was illegal and got sued to clean it up. And I almost feel like we're headed in the same path right now. Battery storage facilities. We had a webinar the other day on this, and right in what they actually proposed, it said there was toxic fumes given off from the actual addition to electricity into the battery, and when the electricity was discharged from the battery, which would actually mean probably all the time. But that's not a problem. They're still pushing that right down our throats. There's no real regulation we can do. And they've basically made it so there's no local law, no local input that can stop any of this because it's the state's initiative. So I would just bet that in 20 years, we'll be back and somebody will be getting sued for the battery, and who knows what'll happen. So we don't learn from our mistakes. It's kind of where we're at. And whenever you try to keep the local community out of any say in these things, this is usually what happens. So I'm not even surprised.
Well, Brian's not last.
Oh, good.
Well, let's say happy birthday to Brian. He turned 60 on Wednesday.
I'm nearly the youngest here.
Okay, well, I got so excited getting ready to congratulate Hannah that I blew right past privilege of the floor, but I don't see any member of the public here, so I guess we don't have any privilege of the floor today. Anybody else wish to make a comment? Mr. Shaw.
By order of the chairman of the board of the Washington County Supervisors, Robert Hinkie, I declare this meeting adjourned and stand adjourned until February 21st at 10 a.m. unless specially convened, in which case due and timely notice